Funny enough, it's not actually just a joke. I actually did read this manga over a single weekend, and it was a good read. When I started it, I wasn't even sure if I was going to like it. Yet, as I continued, I kept reading it and found myself strangely addicted to it. It certainly isn't my type of story. Don't get me wrong, it's a solid manga with great artwork and good writing. But it really isn't my type of manga, so why was I so glued to it? I thought about it, and it was hard for me to nail down a very specific reason, so instead I considered maybe it's for multiple reasons combined. What I'm about to present to you are unique reasons why I was so glued to Chainsaw Man, and why I think that it's a great manga and I would highly recommend it to other people. A lot of times when talking about character morality, the D&D alignment chart gets brought up, as it's a good way to categorize how characters normally react to situations. In most stories, I would argue the protagonist is normally here in the good section, along some line between lawful and chaotic. It's not a guarantee, however, in stories, as we've seen many forms of media take a story that has an evil protagonist or somewhere in between. Denji very much belongs here in the neutral section. He's neither heroic nor particularly compassionate towards others. However, he's not soulless and cruel enough to be an evil character. While it's true Denji normally finds himself on the heroic side of the conflict, normally he's the one killing the evil monsters or saving the person in distress, Denji's motivations are what define him as a truly neutral character. When Denji acts, it's always for himself and because he's
horny です。horny 本人 horny horny.
When Makima tells Denji that he's a pet, it's not only a command but almost like a basis for his character. Denji doesn't care to think about things like the greater good, and instead he just wants to enjoy things like earthly pleasures and living a normal life. So every action he does is to meet that end, whether results are good or bad for others. I think this is a breath of fresh air for most readers, as it presents a unique character perspective that's not normally seen. It also helps events get streamlined since there aren't a lot of reasons to explore Denji's beliefs, allowing for events to occur more quickly in the manga and allow for more stories to be told. His neutral nature also allows for new ideas to be imprinted onto him, and later in the story, he serves as an amazing vehicle for character growth due to his lack of pre-established morality. Chainsaw Man is very unique in the way that it portrays certain character archetypes and ideas. A big example of this would be the way that it portrays sex and sexuality. Most mangas seem to fall into one of two categories when it comes to sex. Either they never talk about sex or sexuality, with the exception of a few bath scenes for fan service, or they're ecchis with an elevated view of sex and sexual acts altogether, not truly capturing the complicated nature that sex can bring. What's so unique about Chainsaw Man is it breaks this mold. First, as established, it does not avoid sex, since Denji is...
This is CNN Breaking News.
And the fact that his power almost comes from his sexuality really makes it a hard subject to avoid. Yet, when a sexual act occurs in the manga, it's almost always portrayed as negatively, and Denji normally mentions feeling empty and loveless after the sexual encounter occurs. It's a nice take compared to the status quo of sex in manga. Chainsaw Man also utilizes subversion in its plot, in order to leave the reader guessing, not knowing where the next step is going to be. However, it manages to use this in meaningful ways instead of making the subversion feel empty. While I have more examples of how Chainsaw Man breaks the mold, I unfortunately can't give them without spoilers. So, fair warning, from this part of the video onwards, there will be spoilers. Since we are now officially traveling into spoiler territory, this brings up a great thing about the manga. The willingness of the mangakai to kill off their characters is very bold and refreshing. The mangakai clearly lacks the fear of losing a character and not being able to use them again, more than likely because they have a very clear idea on what they want to do with the characters in the future and for their plot. From a reader standpoint, however, it means that it can kind of be a bit more dangerous to get attached to characters, which can be both fun and terrifying from a reader perspective. I remember when I discovered that characters really were going to die in this manga, when I got attached to Himino, and after she died, I kept thinking, oh, how are they gonna bring her back? It seemed like a very convincing death, but I don't think they would get rid of her right away. She seems too much like a main character. But at the same time, it became obvious to me that no, she was dead and they're not gonna bring her back. I think this is one of the things that made the manga so appealing, knowing that any character that you could like could die in any moment. The ending of Chainsaw Man is one of the best that I've ever seen in manga, as it takes everything that I just mentioned and reinforces it within the final moments of the manga. First of all, it wonderfully demonstrates Denji's neutral nature as a character. Makima, while the villain, actually promises a future of peace and happiness, and while she is in fact hiding some of her intentions, Denji has no real reason to disbelieve it, nor is there a real reason to imply that she's lying about this promise. This means in the final battle, he's essentially fighting against these things, and why? Mostly because he loves himself. This is a perfect reflection of his true neutral nature. He values himself and his own life over the possible good that Makima could bring to the entire world. It's not for any ideals such as free will, but instead just because he himself doesn't want to die. He realizes during this fight that not only does he want to live a normal life, but an extravagant one filled with multiple pleasures that the normal human couldn't experience. The final fate of all characters does a wonderful job at breaking the mold in how ironic their endings are. The mentor that would give up anything for the ones he loves instead has that love turned against him and is used as a tool for the villain. The love interest of the series actually turns against all the other characters and is revealed to be the actual villain. The tired mentor lives and continues to watch the students that he trained die. The cowardly character remains cowardly and runs away and never learns to be not a coward. Chainsaw Man, through its neutral character and use of breaking the mold, presents a story that might be described as edgy, yet doesn't overdo or overstay its welcome. In fact, incorporating these elements is what makes the story unique and interesting, and why it's a good read. I'm assuming that anybody who's made it to the point of this video has read the manga already, but if you have not, I would highly recommend it. It's a different manga that's a breath of fresh air and doesn't follow any of the normal tropes that you would see, while introducing a unique enough idea that it keeps you engaged in reading. At this point, if you really don't care about my channel or what I have to say, you can go ahead and click off the video. But for those who want to stick around, I just want to thank you again for watching, and of course, like and subscribe and all that, mostly just because it would help with my channel growth, and because liking and subscribing really does help it get into the YouTube algorithm, so I can grow as a channel. This video was tough for me to make. I had a lot of challenges I had to overcome. The program I used kept crashing, but I'm glad that I made it to the end, even if I feel like the less products. Not really what I was looking for in terms of quality, but I'll get there eventually. I hope to be making a new video next week, something based on an anime that will be coming out. I don't want to reveal what anime it is, but I will say that I am a fan of the manga that it stems from.